Hey, boys and girls. It's time for chapter 3 of our book. All right, so chapter 3, The Terrible Truth About Third Grade. Remember how dishonest Jane is being? Let's see what happens. It really is true that I am an awesome reader. What isn't true is the part about reading the encyclopedia from A to Z. Not that I didn't read the encyclopedia a lot. I do. I just never read it from start to finish. I read a lot of grown-up books, though. I like books about romance in the Deep South or during the Civil War. You can learn a lot of history reading grown-up books. Unfortunately, I also mess up on my schoolwork a lot because I read too much. Sometimes I think grown-ups have it backward. I mean, the reason they send you to school is so you can learn how to read. But if you already know how to read, you end up reading so much you don't have time to do your homework. Then you get bad grades in school. Then everyone gets mad at you because you are doing the very thing they sent you to school to learn how to do. This doesn't make sense. Anyway, it was right before Christmas vacation that the trouble started. Miss Sims asked me to stay inside for a few minutes during recess. She was holding an envelope in her hand. "Babette, I'm worried about your homework," she said after all the kids had left. I looked at my feet. Uh-oh, I thought. "You do very well on your work I give you during the day," said Miss Sims, "but you haven't handed in any homework for 3 days now." "I keep forgetting to bring it in," I said, "but I really do it." Did you remember to bring it in today?" she asked. She took off her glasses and put them on the desk. "I'm afraid I didn't do my homework last night," I said. "I had to visit my grandmother in the hospital. She had a heart attack." My grandmother didn't have a heart attack, but she hadn't been looking very good lately. She could have had a heart attack. "You always have some excuse, Babette," said Miss Sims. "I am tired of so many excuses and so little work." "I promise I'll do the homework every night from now on," I said. I meant it too. I really don't like it when Miss Sims gets upset with me. Then Miss Sims handed me the envelope. A great big uh-oh was forming in my stomach. I knew that envelope would make my life miserable. I didn't want to take that envelope home, but what could I do? I couldn't hand it back to her. That sort of thing just doesn't work with teachers. I put it in my backpack. I knew I had to figure out what to do with it later. "You can go to recess now," said Miss Sims. I walked slowly through the door and almost ran into Ellen Winston. Ellen, Mary Beth, and John had been listening the whole time. Remember the museum trip kidnapping story I told Sammy and Elizabeth? Well, Samantha told Ellen's little sister, Kathy. Kathy told everyone in her second grade class. Next thing you know, all the kids in my class were laughing at me on the playground. Even Ellen, Mary Beth, and John joined in singing. "Liar, liar, chicken fryer." They turned out to be just like all the other kids around here. Boring. Now they were giggling at me because I had gotten in trouble. I ignored them and went outside. Usually the school day goes by very, very slowly. Today it zipped by as if it were wearing roller skates and going downhill. Before I knew it, it was time to get on the bus and go home. "You're gonna be in trouble," sang Susie Alton on the way home, right in my ear, too. Ellen or Mary Beth or John must have told her about the envelope. At least she wasn't saying something else. Besides, her name isn't Babette, it's Jane. My backpack was very heavy as I got dropped off the bus. It was heavy because of that dumb note, but it was also heavy because it was the day I go to the library. Luckily for me, the library was only 3 blocks from my house. That way I can go by myself. My mother is very busy. If I had to wait for my mother to take me, I would wait a long time. I can go to the library whenever I want, but usually I only go once a week. I like the library a lot. The ceiling is very high. There are big, tall windows with lots of little panes in them. It was always quiet at the library. It also smells good. It smells like books and glue and the shavings from inside the pencil sharpener. Every week when I go to the library, I check out 2 grown-up books. The next week I bring them back and check out 2 more. Miss Fredericks, the librarian, doesn't seem to care that I only take out grown-up books. I think she doesn't really believe that I read them. Miss Fredericks is very pretty. She has curly hair and she wears lots of eyeshadow and big, dangly earrings. She looks very fancy for a librarian. I started coming to the library when I was in kindergarten. By the time I finished first grade, I had read all the picture books they had. Last year, I finished all the books for kids in 3rd and 4th grade. I even read all of the books for older kids. Well, maybe not all of them, but at least all of the interesting ones. I had to move up to the adult section. Whenever I bring my books back, Miss Fredericks always says the same thing. "Did you enjoy them?" she asked as I walked in the door and put my books on the return desk. I always smile. She always smiles at me the same way, too. It's as if she thinks I'm very cute, but a big show-off. I am very cute, but I don't show off at all. Can I help it if I happen to be a good reader? They were really good, I said. I liked the one about the Revolutionary War the best. It was about this lady who really liked Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry was an important man during the American Revolution, he said. He said, "Give me liberty or give me death." But the lady who liked him got into lots of trouble. It turned out okay in the end. Miss Fredericks laughed, very quietly, of course. You have to be very quiet in the library. Then she patted me on the head as if I were a baby, or maybe a small dog. "Are you planning to take out more books today?" she asked. "You bet," I said. Why not look for something in the children's section?" she said. "You might find some books that are much more interesting for you." "I've already read them all," I said, "but thanks for the suggestion." Miss Fredericks smiled and shook her head. She just started working at the library last summer. If she had been here for a while, she'd know that I'd already read everything in the children's section. I went to the reading table and opened my backpack. I took out the dumb envelope from Miss Sims. I thought it might be a good idea to read what she'd written to my mother before my mother read it. But the envelope was sealed. I sat down in one of the chairs to think. Christmas vacation was a few days away. If my mother didn't have a chance to talk to Miss Sims for a couple days, it would be too late. Then school would be closed for 2.5 weeks. By that time, Miss Sims would forget about it all, right? I decided to rip the letter up and throw it away. I made up my mind that I would do so much homework that Miss Sims would be totally buried in pieces of paper that had my handwriting on them. She would forget there was ever a time when I didn't do my homework. She would pray that I would stop doing homework. There would be so much of it. I was also going to get up and leave without checking out another book, but then I decided to see if there was anything new on the grown-up shelves. I had read most of the books up to L. They arranged the fiction section by the author's last name. Of course, I didn't read every single book from A to L. Some of them looked pretty boring, even for grown-up books. My eye caught a neat-looking cover. It showed a lady wearing a red ball gown. She looked very scared. The title was Wild Flowers. It sounded pretty exciting. I decided to take it out. I figured maybe if I took out just one book instead of 2, I could stay out of trouble. While the librarian was checking out my book, I remembered I hadn't told her any good stories lately. "My mom is opening in a new play next week," I said. "Oh, really?" said Miss Fredericks. She didn't even look up. "Which play is that?" "It's called Southern Express. It has an all-star cast," I said. "Of course." "Of course," said Miss Fredericks. She handed me my book and smiled sweetly. "Are you going to be in the play too?" "They don't let little kids in plays like that," I said. This play is in the big city, you know. It's not like in a church basement or something. I see, said Miss Fredericks. Well, enjoy your book, dear. I figured Miss Fredericks didn't know much about plays either. Marty Deegan was wrong about kids in Grapeville not knowing much about plays. Nobody in Grapeville knows much about plays. As soon as I got outside the library, I ripped up the note from Miss Sims. I looked around to make sure nobody from my class was hiding behind a tree or something. The coast was clear, and I dropped the pieces in the trash. So she's been lying, and now she's ripped up a note from her teacher. Ah! Sounds pretty scary to me.